Kilimanjaro, Africa's tallest mountain. With its snow-capped summit and diverse ecosystems, this majestic giant, the highest peak on the continent, soaring above the plains of Tanzania, is the place to be. Kilimanjaro is a dream destination for adventurers and nature lovers alike. Or at least that's what the travel brochures and websites say. But beneath the breathtaking beauty of this snowy mountain lies a history of tragic events. From sudden illnesses to lightning to being buried alive, these tragedies reveal the dangers that come with attempting to conquer Kilimanjaro. As always, viewer discretion is advised. Let's say you're the fastest man in Africa. Your speed in motorsports have won you accolades on the track, but now you seek a new challenge. Something that tests not just your physical capabilities, but your mental and emotional resilience. So, you decide to climb Kilimanjaro, not for fame or for a record, but to commit to a cause close to your heart. You aim to raise awareness and funds for girls in need of sanitary products in rural African communities, a necessary item that can be scarce due to socioeconomic conditions. The challenge is monumental. At 19,341 feet above sea level, Kilimanjaro is at an extremely high altitude zone, with it being one of the highest peaks in the world and the highest in Africa. The mountain's massive presence is not only visible from miles around, but also felt through the cultural and ecological significance it holds. If you're like me, you might not know that Kilimanjaro is not a solitary peak, but is actually what's called a stratovolcano. It's made up of 3 distinct volcanic cones: Shira, Mwenzi, and Kibo. Shira and Mwenzi have been eroded and dormant for centuries, while Kibo, the highest summit, houses the nearly perfect ash cone known as Uhuru Peak. It's also known for its extreme weather conditions, which can shift rapidly from piercing sunlight to dense fog, and its varied climates. At the bottom of Kilimanjaro, you're in a tropical rainforest, buzzing with wildlife and thick with humidity, a vivid green wonderland. As you climb, the air cools and you find yourself in the moorland zone, with patches of grasses scattered across the mountain slopes. But keep going and the scenery flips again. Now it's the highland desert, a stark, barren land where the ground is mostly just rock and dust. Here, the days burn under the equatorial sun, and the nights bring freezing temperatures that bite to the bone. It's tough going with the thin air making every breath a chore. And then, the final push, into the Arctic zone. It's like stepping onto another planet. Almost nothing lives up here in the icy world. The ground sparkles with frost and the wind cuts sharp and cold. It's here that altitude sickness hits the hardest. With the air so thin, you're surviving on half the oxygen you need. The final stretch to Uhuru Peak is the most grueling. Climbers push through the thin air, through the fatigue to make it to the top. But those who make it to the summit experience a sunrise like no other. At the top of one of the highest places on Earth, the world stretches out in all directions, a breathtaking reward for those who dare to conquer Kilimanjaro. Is it worth it? Well, only those who have summited Kilimanjaro can answer that. But for Gugu Zulu, the South African 3-time national rally champion, the answer tragically never came. In July 2016, Gugu Zulu, a celebrated South African race car driver and adventurer, embarked on a mission to climb Kilimanjaro with his wife, Letshego, as part of a Trek for Mandela expedition. The aim was to raise funds and awareness for girls in need of sanitary products. Gugu, known for his athletic prowess and adventurous spirit, embarked on this climb with a spirit full of enthusiasm and a commitment to contribute to a greater cause. The climb began with promise. Gugu and Letshego were part of a larger group of climbers, all united by the same cause, climbing under the banner of Mandela Day, a day celebrating the legacy of Nelson Mandela and encouraging global community service. The atmosphere was one of camaraderie and collective effort. Like all extremely high-altitude mountains, climbing Kilimanjaro poses significant risks. The first is the unpredictable weather. Kilimanjaro's environment can change dramatically with little warning. Climbers can face intense sun, severe winds, and sudden temperature drops that can lead to hypothermia. These conditions not only test physical endurance, but also mental resilience, as climbers must be prepared to face harsh elements at any point during the ascent. Another significant hazard is the physical terrain itself. While Kilimanjaro is primarily a trekking mountain, which means it does not require technical climbing skills, the paths can be steep, rocky, and slippery. This increases the risk of falls, which can lead to serious injuries. Moreover, the loose volcanic soil in some areas, especially on the descent, makes slipping a common issue that can result in sprains or fractures. But the most dangerous risk factor when climbing Kilimanjaro is the ever-present danger of altitude sickness. Altitude sickness is caused by the failure of the body to adapt quickly enough to the decreasing amount of oxygen available as altitude increases. It can affect anyone, regardless of fitness level or prior experience with high altitudes. Symptoms typically start with mild effects, such as headache, nausea, dizziness, and fatigue. These symptoms can occur within a few hours of ascent and often worsen at night when respiratory drive is decreased. It is a condition that can escalate from mild symptoms to life-threatening complications in a matter of hours. As climbers ascend, especially above 8,000 feet, the risk of developing more severe forms of altitude sickness increases significantly. The two most dangerous conditions are high-altitude pulmonary edema and high-altitude cerebral edema. HAPE can make you feel like you're suffocating, with a cough that sometimes brings up frothy spit, maybe even with blood. HACE affects your brain, causing confusion, trouble walking straight, and even hallucinations. What makes altitude sickness particularly dangerous is its capacity to worsen rapidly. A climber might feel only slightly unwell one moment and then severely ill the next. This rapid progression from seemingly minor symptoms to severe complications is why every high-altitude climb carries with it an element of risk. It doesn't look like much until it suddenly becomes a critical threat to life, and that is exactly what happened to Gugu Zulu. As the climb progressed, Gugu, instead of feeling great, began to experience significant challenges. On July 16th, just 2 days into the trek, he updated his followers on social media, expressing that he was facing flu-like symptoms, but was pressing on, motivated by the cause and the beauty of the environment around him. His last social media post reflected both his struggle and his awe at the natural splendor. Made it through day 2. My wife is doing fabulous. She has even learnt the local language. I'm having flu-like symptoms and struggling with the mountain, but taking it step by step. Today we managed to see our destination and our camp is literally above the clouds. These flu-like symptoms would turn out to be early signs of acute mountain sickness. And as he continued up the slope, Gugu began to experience more severe respiratory issues. Despite his determination to reach the summit, his condition worsened. Details of what happened next are sketchy. What we do know is that Gugu experienced problems breathing. The medical team he was with also made the difficult decision to descend and seek medical help. Tragically, Gugu's health continued to decline very quickly, and he passed away before they could even reach lower altitudes. But Gugu Zulu isn't the only motivational individual to meet his end on Kilimanjaro. Imagine for a moment that you are someone who has dedicated your life to inspiring others. You've built a career out of motivating people to follow their passions and live fulfilling lives. For Scott Dinsmore, this was his reality. A motivational speaker and founder of the Live Your Legend movement, Scott was all about pushing boundaries and living life to the fullest. But even for someone like Scott, who seemed to have it all figured out, Kilimanjaro proved to be an unforgiving challenge. Scott Dinsmore, a native of Alamo, California, was known for his inspirational TED Talk, which reached millions of viewers around the world. He encouraged people to pursue their passions and live their best lives. In January 2020, Scott and his wife Chelsea sold their belongings and left their San Francisco home to embark on a global adventure. Their journey took them to breathtaking locations like Cappadocia in Turkey, Montenegro, and Marrakesh. And they documented their travels on Scott's website, Live Your Legend. Climbing Mount Kilimanjaro was a lifelong dream for Scott. So, after Marrakesh, the couple decided to visit Tanzania, the 20th country on their trip, and eagerly prepared for their ascent. The climb was meant to be an 8-day excursion to the summit and back, and it was a challenge Scott had looked forward to for years. The couple planned to climb Kilimanjaro through the Western Breach, a less crowded, albeit highly risky route. The Western Breach is a daunting section of the mountain where loose rocks and boulders pose a constant threat to climbers. But the trip started well. Unlike Gugu Zulu, both couples felt no instance of mountain sickness or internal discomfort of any sort. In no time at all, they were at the Arctic region of the Kilimanjaro, and just about to begin the final ascent. But fate had other plans. The day started well enough. Scott and Chelsea, on the 6th day of their trek, along with their climbing team, woke up early to start their ascent. As they climbed, the air was filled with the crunch of boots on gravel and the soft whispers of the mountain breeze. The couple was excited, eager to conquer the final stretch to the summit. However, as they reached an altitude of about 17,000 feet, disaster suddenly struck. Like all mountains, Kilimanjaro is prone to sudden and unpredictable geological changes. On this particular day, as Scott, Chelsea, and their team navigated through the Western Breach, a catastrophic rockfall occurred. Massive boulders and debris, loosened perhaps by recent weather changes or the natural settling of the mountain, tumbled down the steep slopes. The rockfall caught the group completely off guard. Most of the debris fell harmlessly past them, but a massive boulder, described by one witness as big as an SUV, dislodged from the heights above and came hurtling down the slope directly in the path of the couple. Scott, who was leading the way, bore the brunt of the impact. The sound of the rock hitting flesh was described by climbers as a deafening metallic bang, like a bowling ball striking a metal surface. This catastrophic event occurred so suddenly that there was no time to react. The boulder struck Scott with immense force, causing fatal injuries. Scott's wife Chelsea and their climbing companions immediately sprang into action, trying to provide first aid. Unfortunately, the group was in a remote section of the climb, far from the easier access routes where rescue might have been more swiftly coordinated. Chelsea, who had been documenting their journey on social media, was now faced with the unimaginable task of performing CPR on her husband. But despite their desperate efforts, it became clear that Scott's injuries were too severe. He passed away on the mountainside, leaving Chelsea and their team in shock and grief. Scott's journey was chronicled through beautiful photographs and heartfelt messages on his website. Live Your Legend. He and Chelsea had been on a year-long adventure around the world, exploring new places and embracing new experiences. Their last dispatch from Turkey, posted just before they embarked on their climb, read, "Onward to Tanzania and then off the grid as we head up Mount Kilimanjaro. #Dinsmore World Tour." But I guess even for the most motivated man in the world, mountains hold the razor's edge of life and death. Our next story is quite bizarre, even by our standards. We've discussed many falls and accidents on our episodes before, but this case is uniquely shocking. Ian McKeever was a renowned adventurer and motivational speaker from Lough Dan in Wicklow, Ireland. He was a leading member of the Kilimanjaro Achievers team, a group dedicated to leading climbers to the summit of Africa's tallest mountain. Ian had an impressive mountaineering resume, having scaled Mount Everest and held the record for completing the 7 summits, the highest peaks on each continent, in the fastest time, surpassing the previous record by 32 days. Beyond his mountaineering feats, Ian was a passionate charity fundraiser and a published author. He was the proud author of 2 books, Give Me Shelter and Give Me Heroes, and was working on a third, Give Me 28 Days. In addition to his writing and climbing, Ian was also involved in the Black and White Makes Sense campaign, an anti-racism initiative he undertook with his friend and African climbing guide, Samuel Kinsonga. Together, they aim to break the record for the fastest ascent of Kilimanjaro. In December 2012, Ian embarked on another climb of Kilimanjaro, this time leading a group of more than 20 climbers, many of whom were Irish, on a charity expedition to raise funds for children's hospitals. Among the group were students from Ballinamore in northwestern Ireland, along with their teacher, Awif Ni Mahile. The group began their ascent on December 30th and hoped to make the summit in good time. But right from the start, this climb was plagued with problems. December is rainy season in the Kilimanjaro region, and the weather conditions on the mountain slopes can change rapidly and dramatically. For the first few days, the climbers endured torrential rain, which made the climb even more challenging. But despite the harsh conditions, Ian remained optimistic, encouraging his team and updating followers on social media about their progress. In his last post made on January 1, 2013, Ian reflected on the event of the rain on the climb. Shira 2, 4,000 meters. Torrential rain all day. Spirits remain good even if drying clothes is proving impossible. We pray for drier weather tomorrow, the big day. It's the lava tower. The post read. The lava tower Ian mentioned is a major checkpoint on the Kilimanjaro ascent. It's located at around 15,000 feet on the Kilimanjaro-Machame route. At the tower, climbers can acclimatize before the push to higher altitudes. However, on that fateful day, it became the site of a horrific and, quite frankly, bizarre incident. On January 3, 2013, the skies were gray as the climbers set out, determined to complete their journey. But the storm didn't share their enthusiasm. It worsened as they climbed, and the group faced severe weather conditions. The team, including Ian's fiancée, Anna O'Loughlin, huddled together, trying to protect themselves from the storm. The conditions were terrifying, with lightning flashing around them and the threat of more severe weather imminent. As they approached the lava tower, the storm escalated into a critical situation. The team was trudging through the increasing rain and wind with Ian McKeever leading the group when, suddenly, disaster struck. Literally, Ian was hit by a bolt of lightning. The strike was sudden and ferocious, leaving no time for any reaction from the group. The force of the lightning was so intense that it knocked other members of the group off their feet, and that a wave of panic through the climbers. The result was both instant and devastating. Lightning strikes can reach temperatures of approximately 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which is hotter than the surface of the sun. When it strikes a person, the high voltage and current can cause cardiac arrest, severe burns, neurological damage, and in Ian's tragic case, instant death. That's because when lightning strikes a human body, it seeks the path of least resistance to the ground, which can often involve the cardiovascular and nervous systems. The massive electrical charge passing through the body can interrupt the normal electrical patterns that regulate the heart's rhythms, leading to immediate cardiac arrest. Additionally, the heat from the lightning can vaporize fluids under the skin and in the nervous system, creating a shockwave that might cause internal injuries and severe burns. For Ian, he stood no chance. Being in the mountains meant he was even closer to the skies and fully exposed to the strike. It ended his life instantly. Thankfully, other members of the expedition, including his fiancée, Anna, who was just a few feet away, were merely injured. But the strike rattled them greatly as well. John O'Donoghue, the son of Jack O'Donoghue, a 60-year-old climber who was next to Ian when the lightning struck, described how the force of the bolt threw him off his feet. I believe that Dad was climbing with Ian, and they were only 3 feet apart when tragedy struck, said John O'Donoghue. My dad phoned my mum from the hospital yesterday to convey the very sad news. He said that he was fine, but he was thrown into the air by a bolt of lightning. Now it must be said that the lightning strike was a freak accident, and a very, very rare occurrence. Even on taller mountains like on Everest, the occurrence of lightning strikes is a dime a dozen. But rare as these strikes might be, the consequences are very real. After the strike, the rest of the group, including the school students, took cover behind rocks, trying to stay safe amidst the chaos. They were later taken off the mountain and brought to a local hospital for checks. Though physically unharmed, the students and other climbers were deeply shaken by the traumatic event they had witnessed. Ian McKeever's fiancée, Anna O'Loughlin, who had been planning to marry Ian in September, was left to grapple with the untimely loss of her partner on what was meant to be a simple trip up the mountains. But Ian obviously wasn't the last to fall victim to Kilimanjaro's capricious whims. In 2006, a group of climbers, driven by a desire to witness Kilimanjaro's glaciers before they vanished due to global warming, decided to summit Kilimanjaro. But the mountain had other plans, and what should have been a simple dream come true turned into a nightmare. Christian Ferguson, a 27-year-old engineer from Longmont, Colorado, had always been captivated by the natural world. An avid adventurer, Christian was driven by a passion to witness Kilimanjaro's glaciers before they melted away. He and his wife, Jody, had moved from Arizona to Colorado to embrace their love for skiing, hiking, and rock climbing. They were part of a Colorado Mountain Club group of 17 climbers who had spent the summer training by scaling some of the highest peaks in Colorado. Christian's desire to see Kilimanjaro's glaciers before they melted is a real concern. Due to climate change, the glaciers on Kilimanjaro have been retreating at an alarming rate due to rising global temperatures. In fact, studies indicate that these ice fields have significantly reduced in size over the past century, with projections suggesting they might disappear entirely in the coming decades if current warming trends continue. One 2022 UN report even predicted that Africa's glaciers, including those on Kilimanjaro, could vanish by 2040 if no urgent action is taken to curb climate change. Before that happened, though, Chris decided he had to see the glaciers on Kilimanjaro for himself. And in 2006, he finally had the opportunity. In early January, Christian and his group embarked on their journey to the summit of Kilimanjaro, choosing the challenging western breach route. This was a dream come true for him, and both Christine and his wife Jody had meticulously planned for this trip for about a year. Now, Christian Ferguson was no slouch. He was a bright and conscientious individual and a mechanical engineering graduate from Gonzaga University. His love for adventure and the outdoors was evident in every aspect of his life. So, he was well aware of the dangers of mountaineering at such high altitudes and planned to take no chances. Known for its steep, treacherous paths and potential for rockfalls, the Western Breach is considered one of Kilimanjaro's most dangerous routes. Despite the risks, the group was determined, prepared, and driven by their shared goal of reaching the summit and witnessing the glaciers. The expedition started on December 30th, and the group faced harsh weather conditions almost immediately. They endured days of torrential rain as they climbed, which made the already difficult journey even more arduous. Spirits remained high, however, as they pushed through the challenging conditions, hoping for better weather as they ascended. By January 4th, the group had reached the Arrow Glacier Base Camp, situated at an altitude of about 15,800 feet between Kibo Peak and Gilman's Point. They were nearing the critical acclimatization point of the Lava Tower at 15,000 feet. That night, as the climbers settled into their tents, the weather took a drastic turn for the worse. As they slept, little did they know that above them, the combination of melting glaciers and recent heavy rains had destabilized the rocks above their campsite. In the early hours of January 5th, while the climbers were asleep, the rocks, loosened by the rain and snow, fell in a sudden rock slide. Boulders, dislodged from higher up the mountain, rolled down with increasing momentum and struck the campsite with the devastating force of a freight train. And the tents, little protection against such a mass, were crushed under the weight of the rocks. If you've ever been camping, you can probably imagine being in your tent in the middle of a pitch-black night. Surrounded by crisp mountain air, you're sleeping peacefully, when out of nowhere you wake up to an increasingly loud noise. Your adrenaline kicks in, as does your terror when your tent is suddenly under attack from boulders. There's nowhere for you to go, or even see what's coming so you can dodge it. Christian Ferguson, a passionate climber and adventurer, was among those directly hit by the rockslide. He lost his life instantly due to the impact. His wife, Jody, also in the same tent, was injured by the falling debris, but amazingly survived the ordeal. Tragically, 2 other climbers, Mary Lou Samus from California and Betty Orick Sapp from Tennessee, also succumbed to their injuries caused by the rockslide. The aftermath of the incident was a scene of shock and urgency as a rescue team quickly mobilized to address the emergency. Over 50 climbers, including those from the Umbwe route and the campsite near Arrow Glacier, were evacuated from the area to ensure their safety. The injured, some in critical condition, were transported by air to Nairobi, Kenya, where they received medical treatment appropriate to their injuries. Thankfully, all injured climbers survived, but for Christian and 2 other climbers, nothing more could be done. The investigation into the cause of the rockslide pointed to a combination of natural factors. Warmer temperatures had melted some of Kilimanjaro's glaciers, causing them to retreat and loosen rocks once held in place by the ice. Changes in weather at the peak prior to the rockslide may have also contributed to the instability. Mohammed Chico, the regional police commander, mentioned that experts were investigating the exact cause, but it was suspected that earth movement or vibrations triggered the deadly rockfall. Compared to other mountains, Kilimanjaro is considered relatively safe, but living on the edge means nothing is ever truly safe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay bold and live brave.